putting system. Please help me in welcoming Mike Shannon, PGA Team Professional.
First thing, I never started out to be a putting instructor. I was a head golf professional for 15 years. I'm laying in bed one morning. I'm the head pro at Oliver in Orlando. I'm looking at the ceiling, and it hit me. I didn't want to be a head pro anymore. I wanted to be an instructor. I threw the idea around a couple of weeks, and I started thinking, how am I going to get a clientele? Because in Orlando at that time, my competition was David Ledbetter, Fred Griffin, Brian Mogg, Mike Bender, and some other really good instructors. I said, I don't know if there's enough students to go around. So I started thinking about being a specialty instructor. If I'm a specialty instructor, I can share with these guys. Sure enough, once I started teaching, I started to get Ledbetter students coming over, Brian Mox students coming over. I never thought I could make a living just putting, teaching putting, but now I need two of them. So it's been quite a journey. When I first started teaching putting, I would take my members out to the putting green and I would get a 10-foot straight putt. And using a laser, we would see where they would really aim. And I would give them a voucher for a free eye exam at any one of 7 optometrists that we had put together. And once a month, I'd bring all the doctors over to the club. We'd have lunch, we would play golf, we'd come in, sit at a table, and we'd start to compare our notes. So I'd say, well, you know, Joe Smith came over, he was a 2-inch left aimer. One of the doctors said, oh, he came to my office. So what we did, we would post the aim, the vision, the dominant eye, and the rate of eye triangulation. From the very first month, we started to see patterns. These patterns continued for a year and a half. We had 132 players go through this research. And at that point, we felt like we had enough information to draw our conclusion. We felt like we were very confident at that point we knew why players misaim their putter. That was the start of this program that I call laser optics. Maybe. There it is. Right now, I'm on my 31st research project. I've done everything from mechanical and stroke research into the effect of putter design on the putting stroke, into the psychology of putting. So it's very rare these days that I see something that I haven't already seen at least once before. And I tell people, I said, don't tell me you're the worst putter in the world, because I've already seen it. It happened to be, I was at Sea Island before I went down to TPC Sawgrass, and one time a gentleman from Houston, of all places, flew up for me to work with his putter. And I have a student data sheet that I have every player fill out, and he's filling it out, and in the part he says, I've got the average number of 3 putts per round. Put 16. I said, do you really 3 putt 16 times around? He said, Mike, before we get started, you need to know I'm the worst putter in the world. Now, the fact that I hear this 2 or 3 times a week, I said, well, we'll see. 15 minutes into the lesson, I knew this was the worst. So I knew the short putter just wasn't going to work for me. So I go back in. At this point, the belly putter was legal. I brought the belly putter out. That wasn't going to work. We'll go back into the golf shop. I come out with a long putter. That wasn't going to work. Now, I'm getting concerned because I'm running out of options. And he flew all the way from Houston for me to help him, and we're not getting anywhere. So I have a couple of tees in my pocket, and I had them to him. I said, can you pitch the tees at that cup? He says, oh yeah. He said, This way I get to use my binocular vision. He said, I've got a condition that when I stand over the ball, I can't see. I have no perception of a straight line. I said, why didn't you tell me that 2 hours ago? So we take the long putter and we get him side side. Within 10 minutes, he's making 6-foot putts, he's making 10-foot putts. I'm jumping up and down, he's jumping up and down, and then he comes back to Houston. 6 weeks later, I get a letter from him. Now, his handicap, when he filled out his data sheet, was 44. 6 weeks later, his handicap is 32. And he said for the first time of his life, he couldn't wait to get to the putting green. Every November, without fail, since then, I've gotten a letter from him that gives me a whole report on how he's putting. Now, he's retired, and he plays every day with a group of 12 players. All 12 are side-side. He is, this past November, last year, he was a 13 handicap. Wow. Isn't that something? So there's more than one way to skin this cat. When I first got into putting the circuit, there just wasn't any information out there. And so I knew I was going to have to do a lot of this on my own. And so I started out with, at Allworth, we had 18 tour players, so I started out with it, just asking them questions, filming them, all of this. Then I met Rick Wright over here. Rick, does everybody remember the Slicer putter fitting system way back? Yeah. All right, that's the guy right there. And Rick was into a lot of research at the time. Dr. Craig Farnsworth would come over to Allworth. Then I had my own projects going, and things started to fall into place for us. And so after 32 years of teaching putting, I'm going to tell you this afternoon all you need to know about teaching putting. Now, you'll never know it all. That's what I want you to know. This has been a journey for 32 years. I just found out something huge about putting last year. I started another project, and it really was good. I presented it at the National Teaching and Coaching Summit in Orlando, and I've had 95 instructors ask me for my presentation, which no problem, send it right out to them. Right now, I just opened up another one on reading greens. I had a tour player about 5 months ago. He came to me and he's using aim point, which I like aim point, but he says it's not working. He says he's gotten to the point he can't feel the difference in the slope. So he's not hitting his lines. And I said, well, you know, we've got to figure out another way. All right, old timers here. How many of you remember plumb bob? Okay? All right, I'm redoing plumb bob. I bet I've read 70 articles on how to plumb bob a putt, and every one of them are a little bit different, and it's a little hazy. There's not any real specifics there. So what I'm trying to do right now is to redo plumb bob, because I think we can make it a little bit more accurate than anything else that's out there. Okay? We may talk about that a little later. Now, after 32 years, my belief in putting is this. Every single player that you teach has the ability to putt as well as a tour player. Because putting is the part of the game that has no physical limitations. You don't have to be big, you don't have to be strong, you don't have to be flexible. You just have to do what great putters do. And that's what I've spent my whole putting career on. So that's what we're going to venture off into. First thing, if you're gonna set yourself apart as an instructor, at some point, you've got to do some instruction. I mean, you gotta do some research. What if you're giving a lesson to a player, and you tell this player to do something, and he turns to me and says, how do you know? Well, this pro down the street told me. Okay? You've got to have enough information. You've got to do your research in order for you to make a statement. Okay? So, anytime I'm doing research, I end up plotting it. And when you plot it, you'll always get a bell curve. When you get the bell curve, you've got to figure out how much of that bell curve you're going to use and how much are you going to eliminate. I use mostly 95%. Now, I'm going to make a statement a little bit. I'm going to tell you that all the good putters on the PGA Tour bring the arms into the body with an arm angle of 120 to 135 degrees. And as soon as I say that, an arm pops up and says, well, what about Randall DeChambeau? You know, everybody goes, he's got that here. Well, he's an outlier. Okay? He would be in here. Okay, so most of what your research is going to be is right in here. But you are going to have outliers, and you have to know how to teach the outliers. Can you get the outliers into that 95 percentile? Probably not. Okay? So you've got to come up with a different way of teaching your outliers than you do the players that are inside the working data. Okay? Very important right there. Let's start off talking about your putter. When a person comes to play, first thing we do, we walk into our tech room and we look at the lie and the loft of the putter. We look at the length of the putter and we look at the swing weight of the putter. That tells me a whole lot of information that I'm going to need to know later in the lesson. Let's talk about it just for a second. All the putters today are made with a weight system, except for me, but I think that's common. Okay? The putting stroke has no force. Think about your driver club head speed. 100 plus. On a typical 30-foot putt, your putter is traveling 7 miles an hour. So comparatively speaking, there's no force to a putting stroke. In the absence of force, mass is the overriding factor in a putt. All right? When you have mass in your putter, the stroke is slower. If you have a light putter, you're creating velocity. So, tour players who putt on faster greens week in and week out, they've all gone to heavier putters because they want to be able to make their stroke without that concern that this ball is going to get away from them. So once I have a player up in the putting studio, I know what the putter weighs. I know if it's going to be good or not. So I'll ask them, I said, at the golf course where you play, what are the average speeds? Do you feel like it's fast? Is it medium? Is it slow? Okay, because if it's fast, which most of them are, you're going to need some more weight in the putter. In the old days, before the weight systems in the putter, when the tour came to the East Coast, they put in Bermuda grass 6 straight weeks. Then they went to Augusta, which was the fastest bend they were going to play. Players only had 3 days to get accustomed to that change in speed. Normally, I would have 4 or 5 players in the Masters. So we'd start on Monday by cutting the grip off and putting titanium powder in the shaft of the putter. And we'd put enough powder in there to bring that weight up to where we wanted it. Then we would roll a cork in epoxy, put it in the shaft, and use a rod and stuff it down in there. That made that transition easier for the player. The only problem was the Monday after we were at Harbortown. We're back on Bermuda, but Harbortown has always been noted to be some of the slower Bermuda greens out there. So we had to take the putter, cut the grip back off, take a long drill bit, drill out all of that power, and re-grip it so that the player could play those greens. That was tough. But now with the weight systems, it's really easy. Now, if you send a putter back to Scotty, you send it back to Odyssey, you send it to TaylorMade, they're going to keep the putter for about 6 weeks. And most of the time, your students don't have 6 weeks. So if you do this, go to eBay. Go to Scotty Cameron putter weights, TaylorMade putter weights, Odyssey putter weights. There are over 50 pages in each of the companies just on weights. You can buy your wrench, you can buy the weights that you need, and then you can really help out the player. That'll help out the player much, much more than some of the instruction. Okay? Now, putters today are made out of a 303 stainless, 303, 304. It's a very soft metal. It's the softest metal in golf clubs. That's why when you hit a putt, you get good feel. You get good feedback. Unfortunately, while we're waiting to putt, we like to lean on our putters. They're going to bend. All right? So that's why I start in the tech room with all of the getting the specs. 60% of all the putters that come in at the Performance Center need some adjustment. Now, I don't adjust it right off because I feed it into the computer, and once the computer gives us the printout, then we'll know if we have to do it, if we have to make some changes with the putter. Okay, hosel. Hosel consideration. All right, everybody here, we're all golf professors. We know what an offset putter is, or an offset hosel. We know what a non-offset hosel is. We know what an on-set putter is, right? Okay, every player that picks up an offset putter will aim it more to the right than they do non-offset and on-set. So if you've got a player that's got a little bit of a right aim, they're going to be a player that's going to need some offset. If they tend to be a right aimer, they're going to need a little bit more non-offset, even on-set. Okay? Center shafted putters. More players should use center shafted putters. I want to tell you why. What controls speed and distance is what? Jump on rhythm. Sometimes you get a player and it takes that putter back really slow, and then he over-accelerates. When he over-accelerates, that acceleration comes from the body, down the shaft, into the heel of the putter. And that putter, the heel of that putter is going to drive out in front, like that. So when I see an over-acceleration, I ask the player, if you're under a little bit of pressure and you're inside of 10 feet, where's your miss? It always is going to be the same. Always misses to the right. Okay? If we have deceleration where the shaft is slowing down as it comes into the ball, the hosel slows down and the toe gets in front. If you have center shaft and you've got a little bit of an over-acceleration or deceleration, it's not going to change the playability of that putter. Okay? So keep that in mind. Let's see, balance. We all know that where the shaft of the putter intersects the club head creates our balance. If the shaft intersects at the middle of the putter head, you have an equal amount of putter in front of the shaft as you do behind. So when you balance this putter, it's going to balance in a horizontal position or a face balance position. Okay? If that shaft intersects a little bit toward the inside, of the middle of the putter head, you've got just a little bit more putter in front of the shaft as you do behind. Then you'll get a 30-degree toe hang. It'll look like this. With this one, where the intersection point is a little farther back, when we balance it, it's gonna balance in a 60-degree position. Then if you've got a heel shafted putter, it's gonna balance in a 90-degree position. The difference is this. A 30-degree toe hang has 3 degrees more rotation than a face balance putter. 60 degrees has 6 more degrees of rotation than a face balance putter. And then 90 has 9 degrees more rotation. And we're going to cover that in just a second. But you need to know that rotation, a lot of that rotation is going to be determined by the toe hang of your putter. Okay? The length of the putter is going to be a product of your belief. There are some instructors out there that they like to see a player stand taller. Some instructors like to see a little bit lower. Okay? You've got to fit your customer or your student to the length that you want. Now, the rule of thumb is this. 5 feet to 5'5" is 34 inches. 5'6" to 6 feet, 35 inches. Over 6 feet, 36 inches. Okay? The lie of the putter, one of the most overlooked parts of a putter, and the results that you can get. We had a tour player by the name of Doc Redman. Everybody heard of Doc? Doc's a good player. Doc was getting ready to go out on a 3-week stretch. He was across the hall in the performance center at the workout area. And he came out and he popped his head in the putting studio. He says, "Hey, before I go, can you put me on here?" I use the Sam Putt Lab. That's no problem. So we get him on it, and it comes out that his toe is off the ground 4 degrees. His loft is 4 degrees. What that means is, with a perfect stroke, his ball wanted to start 8 degrees left of the center of the cup, which from 10 feet is 6 inches. Where do you think Doc was missing his putts? To the right. He's a good player. He's a tour player. He's going to find a way to try to fix it. Normally, when you have either the toe off the ground or the heel off the ground, that means that either the hands are too low at address or they're too high. But we checked Doc's. Doc's was perfect. So it had to be the putter. We take it back into the tech room. We flattened it 4 degrees. The next Sunday on the tour, Doc shot 62. The next week in Bermuda, he finished second. And he came back and he said, "I can't believe what we did. We didn't do anything. We just flattened the putter." But when you flatten the putter, that ball's going to come off exactly where he wanted it to. Right? So keep that in mind. All right, loft. Okay, generally you're going to see 3 degrees of loft when it comes out of the factory, sometimes 3.5. The one thing that you have to do is match up the loft of your student to the greens that they putt. Tour players who putt fast greens, week in and week out, they don't want any launch in their putts. They want that ball coming out this way. Okay? That can be done 2 ways. That can be done by changing the loft of the putter or changing the position of the shaft at address. But you want to keep that ball on the ground. All right, let's suppose you have a right to left breaking putt, 10 feet. And your ball comes off your putter at 5 degrees of launch. What's going to happen is that for 18 to 20 inches, that ball might be tumbling, It might be bouncing, it might be skidding, but the ball's not going to do what you thought it might do. The quicker we can get the ball in its true roll, the more accurate that player is going to be, especially on breaking putts. Okay? So what should it be? If you go and qualify for a USGA event, you're going to play some of the fastest greens you've ever seen in your life. You definitely don't want anything as far as long. Maximum 1 degree. If your club has fairly fast greens, you probably want a maximum of 2 degrees of launch. If you play a golf course that is a little bit slower, you might need 3 degrees because you might need to get this ball up on top of the grass and get it rolling. If you're playing a 3-degree golf course and you're launching it at 1 degree, that ball is going to get stuck in the grass. Okay? Not going to go anywhere. If you need 1 and you're getting 3, this ball's just not going to do what you thought it would do. Okay? French your face. Wasn't long ago that putters had a very smooth face. Remember those? Okay? Ping answers, 8802s, falling cash in, very, very slick face. We were at Sea Island. We were thinking about buying a phantom camera. And the phantom camera is what CBS uses. You'll see the driver coming into the ball and you'll see that ball flatten out and then it'll spring back into shape. That's a phantom camera, very high speed. I have a putting robot. So we brought it into the putting studio. We were comparing a smooth face, 4-degree lofted putter, and a screw face, 4-degree lofted putter. The smooth face putter, when the ball hit, the ball slid straight up the face. When the ball came off the putter face, it was like a knuckleball. It was doing this. When we hit it with the friction face, the ball stuck. And as the putter pushed it along, when it separated, it was already turning over. So we found out that with a friction face putter, the ball turns over 40% quicker than it does a smooth face. Then we mounted the camera above the ball. From 10 feet, it takes 2 degrees to get to the edge of the cup. So using the laser, we opened the face 2 degrees. When the ball hit with the smooth face, not only did it come up the face, but it came up and toward the toe. When it came off the putter, it was already 3 degrees, which means the ball has no chance of going in. Okay? With the friction face, the ball just stayed where it was, came off the face at 2 degrees. Now that player has a chance for that ball to go in. That was the point where I became a real fan of friction faces. Doesn't have to be grooves. With Scotty's, it's milling marks here, deeper milling marks. You've got materials that work very well at holding on to the ball. But I definitely recommend you get a friction face. Yes.
What about like things that are just softer faces, like your white hockey inserts and things like that?
That's a friction face. They've actually got the material that holds on to the ball. Yeah, they've done a good job with that.
Even their older face, that black face?
Oh, the older face, yeah. Yeah, the older one might be a little exposed. Yeah. Okay, metal face or inserts? Okay. You may prefer one, but your student may prefer the other. Make sure they putt with both. Okay. Metal faces, ball comes off faster. With inserts, it comes off slower. You may be a player, you like to feel that ball come off a little slower. And your student might like to see it feel like the field coming off a little faster. Okay? to find out. It's closed. Where are we going to go? Okay. Could be the grip. Could be the setup position. Now, I like to see a player that when they set up, that the shaft of the putter is an extension of the forearms. So I have a player extend, turn the elbows under, and then pull those elbows in. Where I like the elbows, we have our sides here, and the sternum here. I want to split that difference right there. If your arms get too far to the side, you're going to be forced to over tilt. If they're too much in the front, you're going to stand too tall. So I like to see the elbows right there. If in the course of making the putting stroke, the left arm separates from the body, that's what happens. If the right arm separates, that's what happens. So let's say we've got a player that on the backswing, the right elbow comes away from the body. Very common. What's going to happen to the putter? It's going to close and go outside. So what's going to happen? Probably they're going to come back in, and then this elbow comes away, and now they've got an out-to-out putting stroke. If this elbow stays in, they've got an out-to-in putting stroke. Right? Same thing on far side. We come in, and this elbow separates. Now the face is open. So it doesn't matter where you aim at address. If we get disconnection, then the face will be open. The second thing is the balance of the grip. We'll show a slide here in a second. But first off, some players have their inverted V pointed at their chin. That's a balanced grip. Now, if this right hand drops down a little bit, now I've got one V pointed here and the other V pointed here. That's unbalanced. Where's the face going to be at impact? Close. Exactly. Or maybe this inverted V points at my chin and this hand is now over here. Now I'm unbalanced again. Our face is going to be open. Okay? All right. The next thing is the path of the putter. Now remember that from 10 feet, it takes 2 degrees to get to the edge of the cup. So if you take a look at this path, it's 0.6 of 1 degree left of the center of the cup. That's about as good as you're going to get right there. Okay? The path is determined, if everything else is correct, the path is determined by the distance you stand from the ball. If a player stands too close to the ball at address, first thing the putter wants to do as it starts back is to move away from the body. If you stand too far from the ball, the putter wants to start by moving too quickly in toward the body. Every player on the tour stands 2 1/4 putter heads to 2 3/4 putter heads. That's the safe zone right there. If your ball is in that area, there's a pretty good chance this putter is going to be on the correct line at impact. Okay? So, every player has 3 ball positions. The first ball position they have is the distance that they're standing from the ball. And that gives the player consistency. Let's just say, for instance, my feet are 3 putter heads wide. And that's where I need to be. But I go out and play a tournament. I'm on the last hole. I've got a 10-foot straight putt to win. And the wind's blowing. So I go from 3 feet to 4. Or 3 putter heads to 4. Watch my head. When I go from 3 to 4, what did my head do? My head went back. Which means effectively the ball just went forward. Which means what? Now the putter's aimed left of the target. If you set up over that last putt, and this 3 becomes 2, now your head moves forward. Okay? The ball effectively moves back, now we're aiming to the right. So this is very important for keeping your putter aimed correctly. The second is the position of the ball inside the ball of the left foot. When we go outside a little bit, I want to show you how to get all of these numbers from a player. But once we're there, that's the position where that putter is aimed its best. And then 3, well, there's the width here, is the distance from the ball so that our putter is going to stay on line. So when I do a video, this is where we start. We draw the lines parallel to the ruler. That's going to show us the shape of the stroke. From the inside of the ball to the toe line, we're going to have a number. That's going to give us the path of the putter. And then we have the ball position here. That's going to give us aim. And then there's your consistency right there. And every player that you work with is going to be different. Okay? So don't be looking for a number. It'll show us itself as you get there. Here's your balance positions. You can see here that the V's are very balanced right there. That's going to return the face to a square position. These V's are farther to the right, or right and left, but it's still balanced. Here's an unbalanced, okay? This is probably just inside of the left ear, but this one is outside of the right shoulder. And then when you have players who have different grips, if you're going to work with a player and you're going to put them into a claw grip, okay? A claw grip I love. I think it's a great way to go, especially for us older players who tend to get a little bit of the shakes at times. Right? The first thing about it is this. If you're going to grip it with a claw grip, the back of your right arm and the back of your right hand should be level. This way, if our right hand gets a little active, it doesn't hurt it. But what you see most with the club players is that when they grip it with the claw, they get that. They put an angle in. If their right hand gets a little active, guess what? They haven't achieved anything. The putter's going to do the same thing. So, what you want to do there is get your grip at right angles. You want the V between the thumb and forefinger of the left hand to point at the chin. You want the back of the right hand to be parallel to your intended line. Whether you want to teach a 4-finger claw, a 3-finger claw, a 2-finger, or even a 1-finger, it doesn't matter as long as they're in the right spot. Okay?
Quick question.
Huh?
Last year I had a gentleman, I think there's somebody on the European tour, that there's a specific grip, and the hands are like, I don't remember what it's called, I should. He wanted me to teach him that way, and I was just kind of
So
learning.
where the hands are.
Yeah, they're literally side by
I'll show
side.
you that in just a second.
Okay.
That's a great one right there. Right, sometimes a player, yeah.
I noticed you don't have a picture of the rest.
Yeah, 10 low. It's the same thing as the conventional grip, but it can get balanced or it can get unbalanced. Now, sometimes you'll see a player that uses a claw and goes this way. Okay? If you're going to teach that grip, this V has to be at the chin, this has to be perpendicular to your intended line. Then you got the player who likes to go kind of halfway. If you do, you've got to weaken the left hand. Okay? Balance in your grip. If you can get the balance in your grip, you're so far ahead of everybody else. Now we're talking about the setup. These are 2 of my young guys. These are 2 guys I've been working with for about 5 years. The next one will be the other guy. This is Ryan Gerard on the PGA Tour. You might know You heard of Ryan this year? Ryan graduated from the University of North Carolina, not this past June, but the one before. He stayed amateur most of the summer to play in some of the amateur events. In the fall, he turned pro, played some local mini tour events, and then at the start of the year, he decided he was going to go out and try the 4-spot. Well, he 4 spots in at the Honda, and he finished 4th. $415,000. That top 10 finish got an exemption to the next week, which was in Puerto Rico. All he's going to do is finish 9th or better, and he gets his card. He finished 10th. But it's a top 10 finish, so he gets another exemption, which he held to the Texas Valero Open. And at that tournament, he made enough money to get his card. The next week, it was up in my putting studio. We were working. 3 people from the PGA Tour came over to do a presentation on his tour card for him. In the setup position, this is the biggest change that we've made with right here. In getting into a setup position, we want the shaft of the putter to always be an extension of the forearms. Like we said, I like to see the elbows connected into the torso and then tilt it down. If I draw a line from the tip of the shoulder to the middle of the arm at the elbow to the fingertips, we're looking for a right arm angle to be between 120 and 135 degrees. I will tell you that on the tour, it's 124 to 130. Okay? That's this angle here, from the tip of the shoulder, middle of the arm at the elbow to the fingertips. Now, this is when Ryan was in college. You can see from the tip of the shoulder to the middle of the arm at the elbow to the fingertip, 159 degrees. What's going to happen when your putter or when your arm angle gets over 135 degrees? You'll notice the putter will go back and it'll wobble. Anybody ever come to you and say, well, you know, I take the putter angle, it just wobbles. Okay? You draw loops, you draw figure eights, but that's because the arms are too long. The next thing is that from the back of the neck to the belt to the back of the shoe, every player on the tour, and we say that based on our bell curve, is between 113 and 123 degrees. You see Ryan's at 118, over here he was at 129. So, because he was standing too tall, he had to reach to get to his putter. And when he did, that backswing got really loose. In order to tighten him up, we just had to get his numbers right. Now, my next student is Jimmy Stainer. Been working with Jimmy from Tampa, Florida. He's had the tougher of the 2 routes. He's worked hard. He's come right up. He qualified for the Corn Ferry last year, and this year he finished 6th, and he's got his tour card. This is Jimmy. In July of 2020, he had 131 degrees of spine tilt. He had 139 degrees of arm angle, which is just too tall. It makes the putting stroke very loose. Here he was in March of this year. His spine angle is 121. His arm angle is 129. Right after this lesson, I said, Jimmy, you know, there's really only one thing you need to do. You need to write your acceptance speech. Because I felt like he's ready. He'd never won. I thought he's ready. He won that week. So I sent him a text. I said, did you write your acceptance speech? Okay, guys, biggest piece of controversy in teaching putting, where do your eyes go? Okay. Your eyes go 2 to 4 inches inside of the ball. And the reason for that is, if your student tries to get their eyes over the ball, they're probably going to be standing too close to the ball. At which point, the putter is going to go out and away from the body. So 2 to 4 inches inside of the ball is the position that we want to see the eyes. Going back to Ryan just for a second. I want you to notice, in the setup, this line in the upper arm is one plane in the setup. The line coming down the forearm and down the shaft is a second plane. This is what we call a two-plane setup position. Over here, we've got one plane in the upper arm, one plane in the forearm, and the shaft of the putter is a third plane. A three-plane setup will always create a putting stroke that has more moving parts than a two-plane. Okay, there are 4 lines at every day.
What about the angle of the wrist?
We're getting there, very good. In order for you to get the shaft of the putter as an extension of the forearms, there has to have a high wrist position. All short game shots have ulnar, the high wrist position. Full swing, they're low. Short game, they're high. Good question. There are 4 lines that every player needs to take care of. The first is the line from the ball to the target. That's your intended line. The second line is your eye line. Your eyes need to be parallel, but not over the intended line. Okay? Sometimes you're going to get a player who has a very dominant eye, and when they set up, their head is going to be turned this way, or their head is going to be turned this way. And unless you can get their eyes square, it's going to be very difficult for them to aim the putter. Yes.
So when you test an eye down, are you doing the eye, covering the eye, pointing kind of thing to find out if you're dominant?
Not really. By this time, if we've gotten the aim, we know what the eyes are doing. Okay? But we'll give you this. Players, when you look at anything, your eyes triangulate like this. Otherwise, you'd see 2 of everything. Now, a player, in a perfect world, your eyes would triangulate right at the bridge of the nose, out here somewhere. But if you're very right-eye dominant, this triangulation point is going to be turned more to the left, which means that in order to get this player to aim the putter correctly, you've got to move the ball forward. So right-eye dominant players always have a more forward ball position. Left-eye dominant players have a more middle ball position. Okay? And you don't even have to ask them which one it is, they'll show you. Okay, so the first is the eye line, the second is the shoulder line, and the third is the elbow line. Now the eyes, okay, you can see right off on that. You can see right off on the shoulders. The shoulders are the easiest one because